What's going on, guys? This is Martyrs Brigade 99 coming to you once again with another session of Demon Souls PvP. Alright guys, before we get into the PvP, I figured I'd just go ahead and include a boss fight. Now this is the Flamelurker, to the extent that a lot of you guys may not have ever played Demon Souls. And actually, this is one of the bosses that gave me the hardest of times when I first got the game. And I think a lot of people can attest to that. The Flamelurker, especially when you compare the Flamelurker to, like, let's just say Quelaag. I mean, there's just no comparison, you know. Quelaag is kind of cool with the lava, you know, and kind of swatting at you with the sword. But the Flamelurker, you know, this particular boss was no joke. Now, obviously, it doesn't look that difficult because I'm using a Mage build, and my soul mass is basically hitting for like 1900, and I have a Northern Regalia. But if this is your first playthrough, this boss is probably, I mean, this is like the boss of bosses, especially in the early stages of the game. So I figured I'd just go ahead and include a throwback boss fight just to start off this particular video. Alright, so that's that. Alright, so what we're going to include, basically, I have a couple builds. This particular build right here is a level 80. And it's basically an early version to my Vitality Gouge build. Now, let's talk about Vitality Gouge and compare them on Demon Souls with Dark Souls. Basically, the Vitality Gouge on Dark Souls is a joke, 100% joke when compared to Dark Souls. Actually, let me say that right. The Vitality Gouge on Dark Souls is a joke when compared to Demon Souls. Okay, yeah, there we go. Now, why do I say that? The reason why I say that is because on Dark Souls, your Vitality Gouge is basically restricted to elemental weapons, which are relatively weak, right? I mean, especially with the more recent, well, not more recent, but especially with the 1.06 patch. I mean, those elemental weapons were nerfed big time. So, granted, you may have a lot of vitality, but you're not really hitting for that much damage. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you guys are aware, but I did a battle of the uploaders with good old Lance for Life, wherein we were in the arena or Coliseum, whatever you want to call it, and I used a level 100 Vitality Gouge, and I was basically using, I think it was like a lightning halberd or something like that. And I mean, a one-handed hit would only inflict, like, I don't know, 170 damage, no more than 200, and it was relatively poor. But see, on Demon Souls, your Vitality Gouge build is basically a beast, because anyone who's familiar with the game can attest to the fact that the Northern Regalia is super OP. Now, the only weakness, or what I might consider a weakness, is the fact that you have to be in either pure black or pure white world tendency in order to get the full effect, for which you get a total of 540 AR. And that's split, right? So you get a split between physical and magic damage. And another difference between Demons and Dark Souls, at least with regards to this weapon, is you know, if you guys think chip damage is bad in Dark Souls, you haven't even seen chip damage until you notice it in Demon Souls. And you guys are going to notice it in a few matches, because in a few of these matches I go ahead and pull out my Northern Regalia, and I'm just eating through shields. In some cases I'm hitting for like 150 through a raised shield. So, you know, you guys think you have some hotshot Vitality Gouges on Dark Souls? You haven't seen anything until you've experienced one on Demon Souls. Alright, so that was that particular build, and actually you might see it like one or two more times during this particular upload. Alright, so this is my Mage. I figured I'd go ahead and put forth my Mage showcase because the last 2 episodes, they were just basically pure melee. And I know a lot of people basically talked about the fact that they believed, actually that sounds kind of weird, talking about the fact that they believed. Okay, anyway, a lot of people brought to my attention that that mages seem to be a little more viable in Demon Souls. So I guess we can kind of talk about that a little bit. Alright, got a nice parry right there. So let's just kind of talk about it a little bit. I don't think either is really more viable than another. I mean, I think they both have strengths and weaknesses relative to each particular game. Case in point, you have the homing crystal soul mass equivalent in Demon Souls. I think it's just called a homing mass or homing something. And it's basically equivalent. There we go. Homing soul arrow. But see, the thing is, although it is just as effective as it is in Dark Souls, it can also be escaped easily, just like in Dark Souls. So is it really more viable? I don't know if it's more viable. I mean, you still have to kind of manipulate that sorcery if you want it to be effective, because I mean, unless you're dealing with a noob or you're catching somebody by surprise, I mean, that homing soul arrow is pretty easy to dodge. Now, with regard to some of these fire castings, now I do think the fireball is pretty cool. I mean, it kind of shoots as opposed to you throwing it like in Dark Souls. But like I said before, I mean, if any of you guys are familiar with good old Dark Souls Mind's Eye, which I'm pretty sure some of you are, you guys would know that fireballs are also viable. So I think it's just one of those cases where you're looking at 2 games and, you know, you're comparing them based upon visuals. But each particular game has its own strengths and weaknesses, and I think the same can be said with regard to these castings. You know, on the one hand, let's just say, what's that particular casting? It's like God's Wrath in Demon Souls. Now, that God's Wrath, it's slower, but that thing has a huge radius. I mean, huge, and it'll hit you through walls and anything. Whereas on Dark Souls, Wrath of Gods is a lot faster, but I mean, you could basically jump through it. So I mean, each game has its own particular strengths and weaknesses. I don't think any one is more valuable than the other. I just think it's 2 different games, right? And I appreciate both of them for the strengths and weaknesses that they each possess. And as a matter of fact, I think this is kind of an improvement as far as the fireballs are concerned. And this is not to say that I don't like the way the fireballs are cast in Demon Souls, but what I am saying is it at least requires a little more, I guess you would say, skill, for lack of better words, in Dark Souls, because you actually have to aim and throw them. And for a lot of these guys that are pretty good with fireball throwing in Dark Souls, I mean, in some cases you have to throw them in your feet. In some cases you have to just, you know, estimate where your opponent is going to roll, and you have to throw it in that direction. Whereas the fireball here is basically just a straight line casting, which is cool. So I mean, that's just another example to basically demonstrate that each game has its own particular strengths and weaknesses, and I really don't think either game has casting advantages over another. Alright, so this guy is basically just spamming his firestorm. And actually, I do think the firestorm on this game might be a little better. And the reason why I say that is because it seemed like the storm actually lasts for a long time. Now, you know, I didn't sit here and time it, but it appears to last a little longer. Alright, now, this particular guy, I had a hard time with my matches with him. Not, you know, because he really did anything special, but the thing is, well, I don't really have to talk about anything in that particular match. Me and that guy had a pretty laggy connection, and I think we're going to have, here we go, this is the same guy. Now, you guys are going to notice later on that he's going to hit me, and I'm not going to receive damage till probably about 5 seconds later. And actually, if I can see it at the time, I'm going to go ahead and point it out. Let's see. And actually, I think he did hit me already. But you guys just go ahead and pay attention to my vitality bar. You're going to notice just out the blue I'm going to receive that. You guys notice that? I was nowhere even close to that guy, but out of the blue I received damage. And, you know, I had a number of matches with him, and basically all he did was basically just R1 spam. And I was trying to parry him, and I'm thinking to myself, like, man, that timing is spot on. Why am I not able to parry him? But then after having a series of matches, well, not a series, but after having several matches with him, I realized that, you know what? For whatever reason, me and this guy really have a laggy connection, because I would receive damage like 5 to 10 seconds after he would hit me. So luckily these matches, you know, I don't know how laggy they were on his end, because basically I sent him a message. I'm like, dude, what's up with your connection? And he said nothing. So with him saying nothing, I mean, I'm thinking that from his perspective, everything looked fine. But obviously on mine, it didn't, because I would receive damage pretty late relative to the time that he would actually hit me on my screen. Alright, so enough about that. Alright, so we're basically just doing some invasions in the Stonefang. And actually, that was a good lure, I guess. He was trying to... Well, he obviously wasn't trying to push me off, but that's what I would have did. Actually, either I would have pushed him off, or I would have BS'd him off that ledge, as opposed to just trying to hit me with a fireball. But, I mean, to each his own. We all have our own tactics. Alright, now, this shield is basically the Demon Souls equivalent to the Havel shield. That's pretty much the heavy, or not pretty much, it is the heaviest and the most sturdiest shield in the game, to the extent that you guys may not be familiar with it. Alright, so it looks like he's got a fog, and okay, let me just go ahead and help you while you're rolling off. Hit you with a high speed soul ray. You could take that while you're falling, dude. Target was destroyed. Alright, now I think this next match is another example of what I mean with regard to Poise. Now, if I have this right, this next guy was... Yeah, okay. Now this guy's armor setup is basically the equivalent to the Havel's armor, because this is the heaviest armor set, including the shield. If you guys notice, this guy is using the brushwood shield just like the previous fight did. But this guy's going to get stunned just as easily as I am, and basically I don't have anything except for a robe. So like I said in but the past 2 episodes, I'm really glad that they added Poise, and I'm hoping that they add, well, actually that they continue Poise in Dark Souls 2. And actually, I was trying to get my timing right, but I couldn't for whatever reason, because basically he wasn't doing anything but, you know, hitting the R1 button over and over, but I just couldn't get the parry off. So GG with him. And actually he was using that Northern Regalia, which I think is an awesome weapon, as long as you can maintain either a pure black or pure white world tendency, because you get 540 AR. Granted it's split, but I mean, like I said before, you can really chip through shields in this game. You know, it's not like that little, you know, 56 chip, you know, 40 chip that you'll see in Dark Souls. It's a real chip through the shield. You know, unless you're using, obviously, the dark silver shield. Alright, so what do we have here? What match is this? I think this next match is going to be a guy using a pole arm, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, no it's not. Alright, this is just another time I got hit with a firestorm. Alright, not too bad. Looks like he only hit me for like a quarter of my vitality, so I don't think he has a lot of magic. He probably has about 20 points in magic, whereas I have 40 actually. So that's why he was able to get one-shotted. In addition to that, I'm using the Insanity Catalyst, and that particular weapon you guys see on the right side, I think it's like the Crisp Blade or something. It adds a bonus to magic attacks. Right, so I think that's one of the benefits to Demon Souls, in my opinion, over Dark Souls. You know, not only do they have rings that offer benefits, but they also have weapons that offer benefits. You know, because you know, I know a lot of you guys are familiar with the Blessed Path. You know, that regenerates your vitality, and it's not like this weak, you know, one, you know, 2 HP every other second like the Sanka's shield. I mean, it's real regeneration. You know, because you can have blessed weapons with which can give you regeneration. There's a miracle which can give you a regeneration. There's a shield which can give you regeneration, and there's a regenerator ring that can give you regeneration, and they all stack. I think that's one of the benefits. That's yet another benefit that Demon Souls has over Dark Souls. You know, not only do the rings give you benefits, but some of the armor pieces and also some of the weapons. And I hope they kind of bring that back in Dark Souls too. Because basically, I mean, I think the only benefits you get out of equipment in Dark Souls is rings, obviously, and maybe headpieces, you know, like the Crown of Dusk or something like that. And actually, this is a good 2 matches because I knocked this guy over the ledge twice. The first time, as you guys gonna notice, he's gonna rage quit. Basically, session is ended, so that was pretty much a rage quit. And I think, there we go, yep, I invade the same guy again, but this time he just go ahead and take his loss. He actually doesn't even rage quit. Alright, so like I said, this is my level 80 build, and I really think it's overpowered for level 80. Because, I mean, it's overpowered for 125 if you just really want to be serious, because that Northern Regalia is no joke. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to have a few matches against myself and Bubba that I'm going to showcase. We actually had a few, but I had so many other clips I didn't want to focus on. I think we only had like 5 or 6 matches. GG, push him off the ledge again. Yeah, I have a few matches with him, and basically he is dominating me with that Northern Regalia. And actually, there's a huge benefit to being red in some cases, right? Because granted, your vitality is lowered, but you can use a foe's ring, right? And they have a few other benefits. And basically, if you guys are not familiar, the foe's ring basically just adds a 20% damage increase when you are invading as a red phantom. Right, and I was pretty sure he was pure Black World tendency because, I mean, his hits were insane. The amount of damage he was able to inflict was insane. Alright, so basically, you know, we have gankers once again. I know some of those guys from Demon Souls like to say that, you know, they didn't have gankers to the same extent that they did in Dark Souls. Yes, they did. You know, I mean, I don't know if since the game is so old the people have gotten, you know, forgetful. You know, have they forgotten what really used to go on in Demon Souls? But I used to run into gankers all the time in Demon Souls. But, I mean, like I said before, to each his own. We all have our own experiences. I think when you only hang in the circle of basically duels, you know, your experiences are limited to duels. So I can kind of understand why you may think a certain way. If you're only an invader, your perspective is basically going to be tailored around being an invader. I can understand that too. So this is why, I mean, players like me, I basically get the best of both worlds. Alright, now that was definitely ghost damage because I had already finished the roll. And, I mean, at least on my screen, it looked like I had escaped that damage. But, hey, it is what it is. Alright, now, shout out to Bubba. Here he is right here, and I'm pretty sure he's rocking a Vitality Gouge build because I really don't see any other build that you would create using the Northern Regalia at 125 because you need relatively low stats. I think you need like 24 strength and 18 dex or something like that, 12 intelligence and 12 faith. So you don't even, your stats doesn't even have to be through the roof for you to get the full benefit. Right. And unlike, let's just say the Swords of Artorias, where not only do you need these awkward stats, but you need scaling in like 3 or 4 areas just to get decent damage. you can be a low level and beast almost everybody with the Northern Regalia, because the only qualification you need to get max damage is basically pure black or pure white world tendency. Right. And speaking of these world tendencies, I've heard that, they're going to have some kind of day or night element. I'm not really sure. I know there's a lot of speculation going on with regard to Dark Souls 2. So if that is the case, I'm wondering if that day or night element will function similar to, black and white world tendencies. Whereas, when it's full nighttime, enemies are harder, they inflict more damage, they have more vitality. And in the daytime is the exact opposite. And any time of the day in between while making that transition, is kind of similar to, the pure black, the half black, neutral, and so forth. So I don't know, but like I said before, it's still in the early stages. I'm still waiting to see more gameplay footage, specifically with regard to PvP. With regard to Dark Souls 2. So hopefully within the next month or so they'll release some more footage. Alright, so this is my blessed build. And actually I didn't want to go all the way blessed, because what I could have did basically is pulled out my adjudicator shield, but I decided not to. So basically I'm just using my blessed claymore and a dark silver shield. But that particular build, it can be OP because your vitality will replenish really fast, right? Because basically I have a regenerator ring. It's like a replenishment or something similar. The shield, the adjudicator shield, replenishes vitality, and blessed weapons replenishes vitality. So that was that particular build that I just had a few matches with Bubble, so shout out to him. Now this guy pieces me up pretty bad. Actually, he does a pretty good job of dual wielding with a katana and a Northern Regalia. He does a pretty awesome parry at the end. You see, this guy is pretty good with his PvP skills. He's beasted me up for the most part. I call myself going in for a BS, and actually I think it's coming up somewhere around here. I call myself going in for a BS, and he just basically parries me and nails me with the riposte. So that was definitely a good match right there. GG, dude. Alright, so I hope you guys are enjoying these Demon Souls Friday episodes. Now, I really don't know how long I'm going to be able to maintain this, because like I said before, Demon Souls is almost 4 years old, and because the game is so old, it's kind of hard to get PvP. Now, I know a lot of people say, they have set up matches on Fridays, but I don't only want to play on Friday. And actually, if Fridays are going to be my upload days for Demon Souls Fridays, then I probably should have a little footage before Friday, so that on Friday I can upload it. So I don't know, unless I go like weeks in advance. That's the one thing I can really think of. So I don't know. Sometimes fighting at low levels is kind of boring. You can't really do anything except for, compete with your base level weapons. And in a lot of cases, people at those lower levels are not really looking for PvP. A lot of those guys are just looking to get through the game. So a lot of them are not really prepared, because the focus is on getting through the game and not necessarily being prepared for invaders. So, it's cool, but I don't know. It seems, based upon my own experience, the higher level you get, the PvP is a lot slower. So I don't know. I think I'm going to stick somewhere between 50 and 70 or 50 and 75 at the most. And I think I'll just go ahead and keep my invasions there, because now this particular build is 115. I was lucky enough to get a few invasions with my, level 100 plus builds. But for the most part, I got a lot more invasions with my level, I'll say around 75 to 80-ish range. Well, alright guys, this is basically the last clip of this particular episode. Once again, I hope you guys enjoyed the footage. So, hey, until next time, Martyrs Brigade is